The knock on the door came at exactly 6:47 p.m., three soft taps that sounded far too confident for a stranger. Daniel Mercer froze halfway between the kitchen and the living room, wooden spoon still in his hand. His 7-year-old son, Oliver, stood proudly beside the front door, eyes shining like he'd just performed a magic trick. Dad," Oliver whispered excitedly. She's here." Daniel's stomach dropped. He had thought Oliver was pretending. Imaginary friends were normal for a child who had lost his mother too early. This was real. There was an actual person standing outside their modest brick house in Brookdale Heights because his son had invited her to dinner. And Daniel had no idea who she was. Oz. "Oliver," Daniel hissed under his breath, kneeling quickly. "We don't invite strangers home. That's dangerous." But she's not dangerous," Oliver insisted. "It's crying." The words hit Daniel harder than he expected. Crying. Daniel exhaled slowly and peeked through the curtain. On the porch stood a woman in a charcoal gray coat, sleek heels, and a posture that radiated quiet authority. Her dark hair was tied neatly in a low bun. She wasn't crying now, but her eyes looked like they had recently been. She looked out of place. This wasn't a neighborhood where women dressed like that showed up unannounced. Daniel opened the door cautiously. "Yes?" The woman offered a polite smile. "Good evening. I believe your son invited me to dinner." Oliver beamed up at her. "You see, Dad, I told you she'd come." Daniel's ears burned with embarrassment. "I'm so sorry about this. He shouldn't have—" "It's quite all right," she interrupted gently. Her voice was calm, controlled, refined. My name is Adriana Vale." The name meant nothing to Daniel. "Why I was sitting at the park earlier," she continued, glancing down at Oliver, "and your son informed me that no one should eat alone. Today, eat alone." Oliver crossed his arms proudly. A mom used to say that. Daniel felt the air leave his lungs. For a moment, none of them spoke. Adriana seemed to sense the heaviness in the silence. "I assure you, I don't mean to intrude. If this is inappropriate, I completely understand." Daniel hesitated. Every instinct told him to close the door. He had spent 5 years protecting Oliver from disappointment, from judgment, from the harshness of the world. Trust didn't come easily anymore, but Oliver's small hand slipped into his. "Oh, please, Dad." Daniel looked at the woman again. There was no arrogance in her posture now. Only quiet vulnerability. Against his better judgment, he stepped aside. "A dinner simple," he said. "A spaghetti." Her lips curved slightly. "A spaghetti sounds perfect." And just like that, the night began. The Mercer house was small but warm. Framed photos lined the walls, most of them of Oliver and his late mother, Emily. Daniel kept them there not to hold on to pain, but to remind himself of who he needed to be. Adriana sat at the dining table with surprising ease, as though boardrooms and modest kitchens were equally familiar territory. So Daniel began cautiously, serving plates. "You live nearby?" "In a way," she replied. That answer unsettled him. Oliver didn't notice the tension. He talked nonstop about school, about the stray cat he wanted to adopt, about his dream of becoming an astronaut chef. Adriana listened with complete attention, not polite nodding, real listening. Daniel studied her hands. No wedding ring, no visible nervous habits, expensive watch, subtle elegance. "You don't seem like someone who usually accepts dinner invitations from 7-year-olds, Daniel said carefully. "Quabel." She smiled faintly. "I don't." Then why tonight?" Adriana paused. Because he was right," Daniel frowned. "I was at the park reviewing documents," she explained. "It's been a difficult quarter at work. I suppose I didn't realize how lonely I looked. Your son walked up and asked why I was crying. I was crying." Daniel's eyebrows lifted. "You were crying?" "Hi, crying. A moment of weakness," she admitted. "I've built an entire life on strength, but strength can be exhausting." Oliver tilted his head. Oliver tilted his head. "Grown-ups cry too, you know." Adriana laughed softly. It sounded unfamiliar to her own ears. "Yes," she said. "I'm beginning to realize that." Over the next hour, Daniel's suspicion didn't disappear, but it softened. Adriana helped Oliver with a math problem. She asked thoughtful questions about Daniel's carpentry business. She complimented the house. When Daniel asked what she did for a living, she simply said, "I run a company." "What kind?" "A technology firm." He nodded, though unease lingered. Brookdale Heights wasn't exactly a tech hub. Dinner ended with store-bought chocolate pudding. Adriana insisted on helping wash dishes. "You don't have to," Daniel said. "I know." There was something in the way she said it, like she wasn't used to doing simple things without obligation attached. As she dried the last plate, Oliver yawned dramatically. A bedtime, Daniel announced. Oliver hugged Adriana without hesitation. Cabidas, thank you for not eating alone, he said. Her composure cracked just slightly. Thank you, she replied softly. When Daniel stepped outside to walk her to her car, he stopped short. It wasn't just a car. It was a sleek, black, electric sedan worth more than his house. A driver stood beside it. Daniel turned slowly. You run a tech company. Yes. How big? Adriana met his gaze evenly. I'm the CEO of Veil Dynamics. The name hit him like a thunderclap. Veil Dynamics wasn't just any tech company. It was one of the fastest growing AI firms in the country. Their valuation had skyrocketed in the last year. Headlines about acquisitions and innovation were everywhere. Daniel swallowed. You're that Adriana Veil? She nodded once. And you came here. Alone? He came because your son invited me. For the first time, Daniel saw past the power and polish. He saw exhaustion, isolation. Why didn't you say who you were? She considered the question carefully. Because for once, I didn't want to be the CEO. I wanted to be the woman who was crying in the park. The next morning, Daniel assumed that was the end of it. It was. 2 days later, a black SUV parked across the street, then another. Whispers spread through the neighborhood, and then Daniel received a letter. Veil Dynamics had purchased a large parcel of land directly adjacent to Brookdale Heights. Plans for a major expansion campus were underway. The neighborhood buzzed with fear. Property values would shift. Some homes might be bought out, some families forced to relocate. Daniel felt betrayed. Had the dinner been reconnaissance, a strategic move to soften resistance? He called the number on the letter. Adriana answered herself. We need to talk, he said. Agreed, she replied calmly. They met at a small cafe downtown. Daniel didn't waste time. Was that dinner part of this? He demanded. But did you know about the expansion? Adriana's expression hardened, but not with anger. The acquisition was approved weeks ago. I didn't know the exact location until yesterday. So you expect me to believe this is coincidence? Yes. The certainty in her voice shook him. I would never manipulate a child, she said quietly. Especially not yours. Daniel studied her face. There was no corporate mask now, only sincerity. You have to understand, he said, running a hand through his hair. This neighborhood is all we have. I built that house after my wife died. It's stability for Oliver. Adriana's voice softened. I know what it means to build something from nothing. You grew up rich. I know, she said. I didn't. And then she told him about a childhood in a cramped apartment, about scholarships, about working 3 jobs in college, about being underestimated in rooms full of powerful men. I didn't build Veil Dynamics to crush neighborhoods, she finished. He built it to create opportunity. Daniel's anger wavered. So what happens now? He asked. Adriana straightened. I can't cancel the expansion. Hundreds of jobs depend on it. But I can make sure no one is displaced unfairly. How? Community investment, fair buyouts, relocation support, or renovation partnerships so residents can stay. Daniel searched her eyes. You'd really do that? Don't forget who invited me to dinner. The weeks that followed tested all of them. Community meetings turned heated. Yes, some residents didn't trust Veil Dynamics. Others wanted the financial opportunity. Daniel found himself in an unexpected position, mediator. Adriana attended every meeting personally. Not as a distant executive, as a listener. Oliver watched it all, confused but hopeful. One night, after a particularly tense gathering, Daniel found Adriana sitting alone on a park bench, the same one where Oliver had first seen her crying. Still inviting strangers to dinner? She asked faintly. Only the stubborn ones, he replied. They sat in silence. She said eventually, I almost didn't come that night. Why did you? Because your son didn't look at me like I was powerful. He looked at me like I was human. Daniel felt something shift inside him. I have felt something shift inside him. So what are we now? He asked quietly. Adriana considered the question. The people trying to do the right thing. 6 months later, Brookdale Heights looked different, but not destroyed. Veil Dynamics built a smaller campus than originally planned. They invested in a community tech center. Scholarships were created in Emily Mercer's name after Adriana learned about Daniel's late wife. No families were forced out. Daniel's carpentry business secured a contract helping design parts of the campus interior. And Oliver Oliver gained something he hadn't expected. One evening, as they all sat around the same dining table, Adriana laughed freely at one of Oliver's ridiculous astronaut chef jokes. The house felt fuller, not replaced, not erased, expanded. Daniel looked across the table at the woman he had once tried to keep away. Funny, he said softly. I almost didn't open the door. Adriana reached for her glass thoughtful. Most people don't. Oliver grinned. Oliver grinned. A good thing you did, Dad. And Daniel realized something powerful in that moment. Sometimes the stranger at your door isn't a threat. Sometimes they're the answer to a prayer you didn't know you were brave enough to ask for. And sometimes all it takes to change everything is an invitation to dinner.